Do you want a reformation? I know you really do. You never hear it anyway. It isn't going away. You might as well join too. Listen to this video. It's informational. It will just fly right by. Do you want a reformation? It doesn't have to be a reformation.
Go away, Martin.
Okay, bye.
The Reformation was a 16th century movement to reform the abuses in the Roman Catholic Church, ending the establishment of the Protestant churches. Today we are following the story of four main characters in this Reformation tale: Martin Luther, King Henry VIII, Queen Mary I, and Elizabeth I. Before we begin the exciting details of the Reformation, we have to briefly talk about this dandy little thing called the Holy Roman Empire. The Holy Roman Empire was basically Europe trying to revive the Western Roman Empire after Germanic tribes attacked it. It was politically run by the Roman Catholic Church and ruled by a king and influenced by the Pope, the leader of the Catholic Church. Throughout the years, there were many popes who kept the empire in shape until one special someone decided to state his dislikes about the Catholic Church, and let me tell you, Mr. Pope did not like this. We start our story in 1517 with our favorite German monk, Martin Luther!
In my time, the Catholic Church dominated Northern and Western Europe, which would be fine by me seeing as though I'm a devout Christian monk. Except, in this time, the church was becoming totally corrupt. The upper clergy was spending extravagantly and they were neglecting their spiritual duties, while the lower clergy were illiterate, getting married, drinking, and even gambling. But worse than all of these, the church was selling indulgences, which were pieces of paper that anyone could buy that would pardon any sin they had committed and give them release from doing penance for any of their future sin. Indulgences were extra sacraments that many people would feel obligated to buy by the church, even when they didn't have the money to fulfill these purchases. This really upset me, so I decided to take a stand against the clever marketer and Dominican friar Johann Tetzel. I posted the 95 Theses and began to see a real change in people. In my theses, I taught things such as people can only have salvation by faith in God's forgiveness, and that all church teachings should be based on the words of the Bible, and that all people in faith are equal. In Thesis 28, I attacked indulgences and Johann Tetzel directly when I said, "As soon as the coin in the coffer rings, a soul from purgatory springs." The response I got from my theses was astonishing. People began to question the papal control and began to form a new sect of Christianity that was called Protestant. But not all the responses I got were positive. In 1520, Pope Leo X tried to get me to take back my statements, but when I refused, he excommunicated me from the church. And unluckily for me, Pope Leo X and the current Holy Roman Emperor, Charles V, were close friends. So when I would not recant my statements, I was outlawed as a heretic as well. But finally, after years of war in Germany, the German princes who had been feuding over their territory to determine who was Protestant and who was Catholic all came together and signed the Peace of Augsburg in 1555, declaring that each prince could choose the religion of their territory.
Well, that was interesting. Let's move on to Henry VIII and a dashing story of his baby mamas and the splitting of the Catholic Church. Shall we?
Once upon a time there was me, Henry VIII. I longed for a son so someone strong could take over the throne when I'm gone. So I first married Catherine of Aragon, a princess of Wales, and we had a heinous daughter named Mary. So I asked Pope if we could get a divorce, and if I could marry my beautiful mistress, Anne Boleyn from France, but the Pope refused. But I did it anyway because I'm the king and he's a large pile of poo. Poo-poo. I split from the Catholic Church, creating my own called the Church of England, or the Anglican Church, and, well, Anne was beheaded and I was depressed. But I needed a son, so I married Jane Seymour, and we had a son named Edward VI. Thank God! But he was a weak and sickly child, and I was bloody fit to be tied. Jane died shortly thereafter his birth, so I moved on and married Anne of Cleves, who was Protestant, and we had a girl named Elizabeth. Well, as you can tell, I'm not a fan of girls, so I divorced her and I married Catherine Howard, who I never really liked, and she was beheaded before we had any children. So I finally married Catherine Parr, and she was my queen. I loved her so, and so did all of my children. I was very happy, and we lived happily ever after.
Wow! Thank you for that one, Henry. Now let's hear about the Catholic comeback in England with our favorite Catholic, Queen Mary the First.
I took to the throne in 1553 after my brother Edward died. I am remembered as Bloody Mary. Great, right? I guess some people really didn't favor me, considering I burned all those Protestants. But I was only trying to restore Catholicism in England. Because I was such a devout Catholic, I believed that if I did not restore Catholicism in England, then all of my subjects would go to hell. And no one wants that, of course. I was only seeking the best interests of my subjects. Catholicism has been the only religion in England for hundreds of years, and has been working just fine for all this time. So I see no reason for change. My sister Elizabeth, on the other hand, was getting on my nerves. Everyone liked her better, even though she was one of those Protestants. Anyway, I didn't like all the talk about how Elizabeth was prettier than me. So what if I was 37 and not married? I still had time to find someone and have children. Besides, would her beauty make her a better queen? I think not. Finally, in 1554, I married Philip II of Spain. It was so great. Finally a man by my side, and the nation was Catholic. However, most people did not like our marriage. Something about how they didn't want to be governed by a foreigner. I'm pretty sure they were all just jealous, though. I mean, he could really rock those man tights back in the day. Anyway, this Thomas Wyatt guy led this huge group of 3,000 people to protest my marriage and my anti-Protestant views. Despite his efforts, he did not get to me because he was tried and executed along with many of his rebels. In 1555, I finally got pregnant! Lots of people could not believe it, but I was not going to let them get in the way of my happiness, until I found out it wasn't a baby. Turns out I had cancer, and what I thought was a baby was actually a tumor. Great. Looks like it's Elizabeth's turn for the throne had come. Hopefully she doesn't ruin England with her pretty face and nonsense religion.
Woo-hoo! Tensions seem to be running a bit high between the sisters. Let's hear from Elizabeth's side of the story to get to the full picture.
People often saw me as an icon of the new faith or the Protestant religion, mainly because marrying my mother was the reason why King Henry, my father, changed the Catholic religion. This caused many Protestants to rebel in my name, but I honestly had no part in many of them. But, of course, my sister did not believe me and locked me up in the awful Tower of London, where my mother was executed. I was eventually released when Mary thought she was pregnant and I wasn't as threatening to her. When Mary passed away, I was finally crowned and England became Protestant once again, with some difficulties, of course. There was so much religious mayhem that I decided to pass the Religious Settlement of 1559. Matthew Parker was made the first Archbishop of Canterbury, my church, and helped me write the 39 articles of religion produced by Convocation, and make it not change too much, except change everything that was Catholic to Protestant. Some of our major tenets were to make sure that everyone could read the word of the Lord, not just the clergy, so they wouldn't scam anyone. Of course, there was some trouble from my cousin, Mary of Scots, who Catholics want to be in power, but when a serious plot in her name came up, I just had her executed.
Up with the head!
I died in 1603, called the Virgin Queen, never having married.
Goodness golly me! Isn't the Reformation simply fascinating? But do not get discouraged yet. We're not even close to being done. Let's delve into the significance of this extremely exciting movement.
The Reformation brought about many significant changes, and not only in England. Economically, business practices became more sophisticated, and a divide was solidified between the Eastern and Western European agricultural systems. Some economically dominant cities developed as well as a strong rural industry. In relation to politics, Henry VIII separated from the church
of Rome primarily for political reasons, and Queen Elizabeth was trying to regain Protestant rule in England because of political reasons. Protestant views allowed for royalty to rule instead of church officials, which was favorable from the royalty's political stance. When royalty held supreme rule, they could do what they liked with the church, increasing their economic power and guaranteeing the survival of Protestantism for some time. Regarding cultural significance, religion has always served as the basis of most cultures, so starting a new religion would prove to spark some new cultural ideas. After the papal authority was ended, there were more options for nobility to do as they pleased with laws and how they ruled their lands. The feudal way of society was diminishing, and nationalism was on the rise. Socially, the clergy had formally controlled the secular and spiritual lives of the people. Women gained the rights to divorce and remarry, and education of girls, especially in literacy, was encouraged. Most women's new rights came from Bible passages declaring that women are equal to men.
Unfortunately, we have come to an end. I hope our video was quite informational for you Benschine scholars. I am so glad that we were here to share it with you.